Hey guys, I'm Nathan from Harrison Audio, and we have an exciting interview for you today. We have Sean Shannon of mixingtheband.com, and we're going to dive into his history and just pick his brain about different audio questions and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Hey Sean,
Good
how's it going
evening.
today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm liking the nice big console you have there behind you.
Yeah, that's an AMEC Big that I picked up from David Rochester, who was the AMEC tech for many years. So it's in real good shape. I love this thing.
Yeah, I seeming somewhat stalk you on Facebook. You kind of go through your different your audio recording setups and studio setups and stuff, and you got some really nice gear in there for sure.
Yeah, I kind of over the years collected things that I felt were important that I needed for getting the sound I want to get. So yeah, there's some cool stuff in here. A lot of good stuff to record through. A lot of good mixing tools, and the console itself isn't too shabby. It sounds really good and has super true automation. So
Oh, awesome. Well, this
yeah.
is a good point to make here. Anyone in the chat right now, if you want to go ahead and leave a comment over in the chat, then I'll be taking a running toll of what those are, and we can ask those to Sean here a little bit later in the interview. Okay. But first of all, Sean, let's just go ahead and get you the nitty gritty on your music recording journey. So, what instruments do you play? That kind of stuff.
So I'm a drummer. I play a little bit of some other things, but just enough to be embarrassing, I guess. That maybe sketch a song idea, something like that. Uh, but I started very young playing the drums and was in a lot of bands through high school and did all that normal stuff. But I was always recording myself and recording my bands, and I was the guy that would do that. So after that, I went to State University of New York at Fredonia, went through their Tonmeister program, which is real heavy in the science and in the music. I had to conduct orchestras as well as take physics and calculus and all that kind of stuff. A lot of acoustic training and things like that. It was just such a great program, and the teachers were very cool. Dave Moulton was there at the time, and he, I guess, ended up going over to Berkeley and teaching there for a while. But so yeah, so a lot of training there. But really, it was after I got out of school. I moved to Florida. I was doing sound for SeaWorld. Uh,
Oh, cool.
I mixed Shamu, you know, but we I started building studios and making records with all the local guys, and eventually I met Pat Travers, and he took me out on tour as his drummer, and that was super cool. Got to go all throughout Europe and the United States and Canada and all over the place, and just bang the tubs and meet a lot of people. And I met so many people working with Pat, so many huge stars, and just I saw so much. I met so many people. I learned so much from him. So all these years later, it's kind of cool to still be making records with him. And he's got a great little touring band right now. I'm going to record them later today. But
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
yeah.
Kind of question going along those same lines. How does being a musician and having that experience on stage, playing for live people, how does that help you in the studio, if at all?
Well, um, I think that having the experience of being the performer is really important when you're setting up headphone mixes for bands, because you kind of have an idea of what they're going to need to hear. And I know what I like to hear when I'm laying a track down. And my day gig, I'm the head audio engineer for the Dr. Phillips Center here in Orlando, Florida. So I'm mixing orchestras, rock bands,
Oh yeah.
comedians, talking head convention type stuff. It runs the gamut. And so a lot of times musicians need certain things in their monitors, or they need things to sound a certain way. And I think I'm pretty intuitive with all that based on my experience. So I think it's a big help. And I think if you can do live sound, that really helps your work in the studio because you have to pull something together pretty quick and
Yeah,
solve problems.
it's definitely a direct correlation between the live scenario and then transferring that into the studio experience, if you will.
Yeah, I think they're pretty closely related. Um, One thing is when you're in a live situation, the room always changes. The amount of people change. Sometimes you have different PAs on different nights. And when you're in the studio, you're in a controlled environment. Everything's the same every day. And I joke with these guys that come on tour, because they have front of house guys and monitor guys come in that are with the tour. And I just joke that they have to set up their studio every day before they can get any work done. They got to do hours of all this setup. So, but
Right.
it is what it is. It's how it works.
Yeah, that's fun. What other kind of venues, I guess locally there, do you work in?
Well, I do freelance sound as well, so I'll be in
Okay.
the local bars or theaters or whatever, mixing bands. I really like to mix bands. I like music. I can do the corporate thing. I've done that for many years, where you get 6 or 8 people on stage with lavaliers pinned to them, and the main thing you have to worry about there is crappy lavalier to sound good and not feedback and no ringing and all this stuff. So those kind of gigs are very technical. And mixing Broadway type shows is extremely technical. It's line by line, fader up on every line. Someone walks on stage, they're up, they go off, they're down. And my preference is music. I'd rather mix an orchestra or mix a rock band and feel that PA happening and get the emotion of the vocal out to the crowd and see them cheering. I just love mixing music. So I kind of lean towards that direction a little bit more, but I do it all.
Yeah, that sounds great. What other kind of bands have you played in, or maybe just genres in general?
Well, I think as a teenager, it was a pretty important part of my life to play with as many people as possible. And I had probably a dozen bands that I was in and out of in the 4 or 5 years of junior high and high school. And it was nothing with click tracks back then. It was nothing with reading sheet music or anything like that. It was basically, hey, I got this riff. Jump in, Sean. So everything I do was off the cuff and improv, and I would practice hours and hours a day on getting everything to coordinate, getting the feet to do the doubles, maybe a flip on the stick while I'm doing a beat, and just work on that and work on it. And when I got with Pat Travers, of course, he had Tommy Aldrich in the band before that. So I always felt like I had to give the audience a little bit of that experience. And so I worked really hard on the showmanship and being tight and having, the cool fill and matching what was on the record and a little bit of my own taste in there. But after Pat, the touring days there, I ended up in Molly Hatchet for a couple of years. I did a couple records with them and a bunch of world tours. I played with Brian House, Bad Company, Rob Rock, and a host of other people, but those are probably the main ones there. So yeah, I'm into rock. I'm into southern rock, blues, country, anything that takes a bunch of guys with wood in their hands just making music.
Yeah, any jazz or anything like that? Big band type music? I mean,
It's
I'm sure you
funny.
could. I'm sure you could just jump right in and make it happen.
That would be my dream situation. Not so much jazz, but the big band thing. I was in a
Yeah.
band with a couple of buddies of mine that we had a whole horn section and, guitar, bass, drums, keyboards. And these guys were all like wizards. And there was nothing more powerful than hitting a crash with the horn stabs and just the whole band on fire. If I could have a band I'd put together right now, I would love to have a band with horns and backup singers and a killer front man and big power sound.
That is cool. Slight experience on my end here. I did play guitar at a community college in the Sneed State Jazz Band in
Oh, nice.
Boaz, Alabama. And that was a fun experience because, you got the whole row of saxophones, trumpets, trombones, and I was in the rhythm section, obviously with the piano, bass, drums, and I was on guitar. And that was actually back when I didn't even know how to play jazz, but somehow the music director saw something in me and gave me a shot. So yeah, I can definitely concur.
Awesome.
It's fun playing in a big group like that. And then the group also doubled as the pep band for all the basketball games. So we would play all the modern pop tunes and whatever else of the day, back in 2001 or something, many years ago. So that's fun.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the gear for recording, for instance. So, and there's a question that did come in that can go along with this. Is recording to tape important to you and your clients? And like, what's your preference between like tape and going just to a computer?
Well, I did use tape for many years, using the 24 track 2-inch tape decks. I had my own 16 track that I used for a couple of decades, actually. And, when I pull up those tapes and I listen back, there's something nice and smooth about the sound of it. So I will always lean towards getting that kind of smooth sound with the digital stuff if I can. But I really don't want to go back to using tape because of all the inconveniences, the tape noise, the rewind time, the auto locator to a number instead of seeing your waveforms and all this. We've come light years from then. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of software out there that can get that sound. And quite honestly, it doesn't matter what I record on if I'm in a mix and Mixbus. This thing just has a sound. It brings me right back to the day of tape and analog boards. And it's a big part of it for getting that richness. I think I do some mixing in Pro Tools as well, but I need dozens of plugins to get to where I am at with a starting point with Mixbus. Everything's built into the console. It just sounds great. So I really don't want to have to go back to using tape, but I do, fondly look back on it, and I do appreciate the sound. But as far as recording, I think a lot of people out there might be doing beats with vocals. They might have their own band they want to record, that sort of thing. And I think the most important thing is, decent mics and preamps. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but just watch your levels, get a good sound, leave some headroom, and make sure it sounds good going in. And you should be in good shape when it comes to mixing. When I'm recording a vocal, I like to run it through a compressor. If there's an issue, I might use an EQ, like a low roll off, or maybe a little bit of top bump, something like that. But I try not to EQ too much on the way in, but I do like to use compression on the way in. I think that really thickens up the sound and really controls the volume swells with the peaks. And sometimes I'll record verses separately from choruses so I can turn the gain up on the verses and have them get closer to the mic and maybe a little quieter. And then we get to the chorus, I'll turn the preamp down and have them belt on it, So it's kind of an art and a science to it, but I really, really think you need decent gear, but, you don't have to be in $1 million studio. I get stuff from laptops all the time, bedroom studios to mix. And, I have to take it from zero to hero and get that sound that they're expecting. But, not everyone has access to it. So
yeah, sure. Or what's the typical your go-to compressor that you have there in the studio for vocals, for instance?
Well, I have a distressor, and I think that's one of the best compressors ever made. You can make it sound like an LA2A or an 1176 or anything you want, really. It's very flexible. I like to have it on super fast settings, as far as a zero release, and maybe just like a 2 on the attack, so it doesn't cut off the transients too much or the detail in the lyric, but it will get out of the way real quick. And I've also, believe it or not, I've got this liquid channel that Focus made about 15 years ago. They're not in production. They're discontinued. But it's got 40 mic preamps I can select if I want a Telefunken or a Neve or an SSL tone.
Right.
And there's transformers in there and relays that change the circuit. And then there's 40 compressor models in there if I want a Pi or a distressor or an LA2A. So lately I've been cutting all my vocals through that, and I'm really happy with that. But
so it's the
down at the other
Focusrite
studio.
Focusrite Liquid channel. Is that what it is?
It's the Focusrite Liquid channel, and you can only
Cool.
get them used.
Yeah,
But
I've
man,
seen
that
them
thing
around.
sounds good.
Yeah, I've definitely seen them around. That's cool.
But
I'm looking
any
at.
decent mic, a decent preamp, and a decent compressor. People like to rag on the lower price stuff, maybe the Warm Audio or whatever. But
Right.
I've got a couple of those things. You track through it, it sounds fine. I'm not really all that worried about a brand name necessarily. If I hear coming out of the speakers what sounds really good, I'm going for it. We can't spend all day on this. Let's get the good take.
Right. Right. I have a Rode NT2A set up in my vocal booth, and it just works for everything I've used it on.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, Mike.
Yeah, I love it. I'm looking at some other questions here. Do you also produce artists and bands? If so, what is your MO as a producer? I'm not sure what MO means, but
Modus operandi. That is,
yeah.
how I approach it. I would say, yes, I do produce records. I've produced a lot of records, and I'm producing some right now.
Cool.
And see, the difference between old school producing and just using the title producer and letting the band do everything themselves is it can be a pretty wide gap. I don't think a lot of bands realize that they need a producer. And so what I
Right.
come up with a lot of times is a band will send me a demo of their song, and I'll listen to it, and it might be great riffs and good lyrics and a nice melody and all that, but the whole arrangement, the whole production of it is like a run-on sentence. It comes in, it's at 10, it goes through the whole song at 10, and then you're out. And
Right.
so as a producer, what I like to do, and you'll notice a lot of these things happening in major hits. It's not a secret. You just have to study it. What I'll do is I'll get involved at the pre-production level, and I'll go ahead and make events in the song happen. Like, for example, we're going to go into that second chorus. What's going to happen there? Are we just going to roll right into it, just like the first one? Well, I don't think so, because that's what they're expecting. You want to
Right.
slap them in the face, give them something to pay attention to. So I always
Yeah.
put an event before the second chorus. A good example of that is like Dirty White Boy by Foreigner. They
Mm-hmm.
double the line, I'm a dirty white boy, twice before the second chorus, and it makes you hang on to that, waiting for the cliffhanger of the chorus coming in. It's just a good example from back in the day. So another thing I like to look for is the arrangement going to have some ebb and flow? Is there going to be a breakdown? I like to have songs, even heavy driving stuff. All of a sudden, bam, they get to the end of this high point with the solo, and it comes right down to the vocalist and the acoustic guitar doing the title of the song right in your face. And then, gagagoo, gagagoo, the band's back in, and wow, you're back in. I mean, you got to have that up and down and a couple of punches here and there.
You do,
So
yeah.
for me, producing a record for me is a little more than just, well, hi, I'm going to engineer you and I'm going to mix it and I'll master it. There's let's put this together from the ground up and make it something that really has an impact. So I put a lot of time into that side of it. It's a good question.
Yeah. So there's got to be a huge emphasis on arrangement, and like you're saying, like when does instruments come in? When do they come out? The timbre
Exactly.
of the instruments. The overall
I
tonality.
had one
just
band.
all that stuff.
Exactly. And I think the cliffhanger thing and little surprises is more important than people think. You'll hear this all over hits. You might not notice it because they do it very smoothly. But like one time I'm producing a band, and they come into the first verse and the drummer just wants to bang right into the beat and get started. I'm like, no. I mean, the second verse. We came out of the chorus. We're coming into the second verse. A little bit of a lull there. And I told the drummer not to come in on one. Don't come in until 3. And so they do the vocal, then he comes in on 3 and picks it up where they left off. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful way to get everybody paying attention. And wow, that was cool. And I think a lot of that separates the difference between a record and a demo.
Mm-hmm.
A producer can have a huge impact on how you might have a good song, but is it ready for prime time? I think it might need to go through the grinder and be produced a little bit.
Yeah, I've definitely heard I mean, you can make this analogy for many other things, I'm sure, but like it's kind of like reading a good book. It's like you read it through the first time, and okay, you kind of got the gist of the details, but then you read it through again, and you keep finding little nuggets of things to grab onto in the story, and the song can very much be a story within itself. So each time you listen to that song over and over, you keep noticing little details like, oh, how the shaker came in on this bridge, or that you didn't notice before, or anything like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of subtle things producers do. They'll put a tambourine under the snare in the chorus. They'll
Oh
make
yeah.
the reverb will be bigger in the chorus than it is in the verse. There's little changes. And I always recommend, if you're getting into mixing and you want to make better mixes, to try some of that production stuff. Make sure your faders are moving. Make sure everybody comes up in the chorus a little bit, comes back in the verse. Have some movement, you know. And when you're talking about planning the arrangement of the song, I don't think it's just exclusive to music. I think these Broadway productions that I work with, comedians that come in, you'll notice a
Hmm.
comedian will tell a joke up front, and then three-quarters of the way through, his joke there ties into the joke at the beginning, and he may also
Yeah.
had a big raucous section and come down to a breakdown where he gets intimate with the audience as well. So I think having that sort of dynamic to your performance pretty much crosses a lot of genres and a lot of styles of art.
Yeah, I think that does kind of separate the garage band. Nothing wrong with garage bands, by the way. If you're a garage band that just wants to rock on the weekends, then that's fine. But I think that's where the separation between like the men and the boys come in almost. It's like the guys that really know how to take that production to the next level, and like you said before, give you the showmanship that you see on stage. That's like why the big bands are big, because they're
Well,
big for a
look at
reason,
vocals. Even
Yeah.
just getting into vocals. I do a lot of vocal production where I have the track, it's mostly already done, but I've got a bunch of vocals to work on with the singer. And we get right into phrasing, uh, melodies. I have suggestions for melodies. I have usually what I like to do, for example, is like you know how you have a verse chorus, intro verse chorus, and then a break, a B section, some kind of breakdown. You come into a tag out like the last chorus. On that last section of the song, I always try to have the vocalist step out. And you can hear this in a lot of my records where maybe the backup vocals will take over the chorus and the singer is ad-libbing over the top and doing soaring melodies and stuff to kind of retell the story again with some more emotion at the end and suck you in at the end. So yeah, there's a lot of a lot of little things that go into it, and I usually like to go into each record with a little bit of a plan once I hear the demos.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you know you think in a very conceptual kind of way. Like these are the concepts that I can apply whether I'm working with Pro Tools or whether I'm working with Mixbus or any other DAW, any other console that might be behind you. The concepts are the same of regardless of what the gear is or the software that you're using. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I'd say I have to be a chameleon, but there's because consoles change from day to day where I work. I might be
Hmm.
in different rooms. There might be different studios I'm working in, and it all kind of functions the same. So once you get the nuances of the room, a lot of times the first place I like to look when I walk in a studio is the patch bay. I want to visually see the routing, how the mics get into the console, how the inserts get into the patch to the rack gear, and how the effect sets are laid out and all that, so I can get to work pretty quick. But I'd say, yeah, with me, feel is everything. Because, like I said earlier, growing up in bands, I wasn't following sheet music. I was playing, trying to get the best feel and sound. I studied all the drummers off the Jeff Beck records and Billy Cobham to get some chops up. And then simple stuff like Bad Company, I mean, how simple is that? But then I ended up touring with Brian Howe, and it was just an amazing experience.
That's pretty cool.
And so I think when bands come in to make a record, I'm pushing for feel more so than technical wizardry. I mean, that's part of it, obviously, for some records, but
Yeah.
if it feels good, if the vocal feels good, it doesn't matter if they had a slip on a line or they had this and that. If I'm feeling it, that might be it. And you could see if you listen through the years, a lot of records have little mistakes in there. There's a Led Zeppelin record. Pat pointed out to me. He'll have to remind me which one it is. But the bass player goes to the wrong note and then catches up. It's in the record. You might never even notice it. So,
And it's a
lots of
classic,
stuff like
you
that.
know.
And it's a big hit all over the radio for decades. So you got to go with the feel, man. Make it feel good. If people can't feel and get some kind of emotion from what you're putting out there, you're not quite there yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm looking for another question here. As a drummer engineer, do you have to resist imposing your own sonic preferences regarding the kit sound rather than just going with the drummer's choices in terms what have been provided? Does that make sense?
Well, I do a lot of samples replacement of drums, like getting that big Chris Lord-Alge snare sound and making the toms massive and getting that kick that hits you in the chest. But that doesn't always work. So sometimes the band is just a little trio that wants to sound like they're in a club. And I would just use the mics and mix it to sound like the room. I might even put up extra room mics. So I do have preferences when it comes to styles, but I always have to remember to stay in the genre, stay in my lane there, and not, put my signature on something when it's inappropriate. And I think it's as long as you have an open ear to all that stuff, it shouldn't be too hard. Just kind of go with, you're trying to mix what the band wants to be in their image with what you think maybe a record label or the general public might want to hear. So back and forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. That question was from Cal Richards. Thanks, Cal, for sharing that. Another question we have, which is a very interesting topic, but how do you bill as a producer? Do you do daily, hourly, by the project? Anything like that?
Interesting question. Well, I have different ways to bill for different things. Like, for example, if I'm already working on the record and I'm going to be recording it and mixing it, I would add a flat fee to produce the record in the hopes that they go off and do something great with it, rather than sit there and try and negotiate for points and stuff. I mean, a lot of people aren't making money off their records right now. Spotify doesn't pay very much. You're making money off your live shows. And I look at my job as a way to help them be everything they want to be. I'm not there to make my record, it's their record. So I would charge a fee to produce the record, maybe a per song fee or something like that. For mixing, I usually do a flat rate per song because sometimes I'll spend 2-3 nights on a mix and I don't want to be billing by the hour for that.
Right.
For tracking, we just go by the hour with studio time. So I would break it down into like 3 areas. We'd book a few sessions for tracking and we'd pay by the hour. And then they would walk away and I would do the mixes and I would do a flat rate for that and then send them the mixes and they would critique them and I would make any revisions and send it back. And we get to the finish line. And then if I had produced the record, then they would pay a fee for that. But that's really it. So I don't really bang bands for royalties or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel the same way. And I've seen other producers, engineers kind of give the same kind of synopsis there. But it is a very common question for people who are trying to start in the industry or just start doing any of this kind of work, and they're wondering, how do I charge a band accordingly for my time, but also not make them feel like you're nickeling and diming them for every session they do,
Well, you could charge by the hour straight up for everything you do, and the band might have 10 waves of revisions coming, and after a while they'll get tired of paying. But it's like I try to make the mix so good that if there's revisions, it's stuff that they personally might catch and maybe no one else does. Like, hey, he said the wrong line here. Can you swap this out? Or I think the backup vocal should be a little louder in this section or something like that. But the whole point of billing by the hour for tracking is you don't want to get in an endless loop there where you're working for $3 an hour. But mixing, I can never tell how long it's going to take. I might not be happy with a mix after I worked on it for 2 days, And then finally, the third day, I just put the right thing here and the right thing there, and it goes out the door. I'm excited about it. So I'm not going to bang the artist for that, all
Yeah.
those extra hours. That's me being creative too, so.
Well, that's awesome. And that question came from Mark. He says thanks. So,
Yep.
so that's awesome. Let's talk about Mixbus a little bit. So, how did you find out about a program called Mixbus, and how did it change your life forever?
Well, I started the mixing workshop, my Mixing the Band training program in 2007. I had an SSL room I was working in a lot, and I set up about 4 other studios in there that were just little mix labs. I had an analog Ramsa console. I had some Panasonic DA7 digital boards. I had a Control 24. So I had different boards in different rooms and the SSL room. And they would go from room to room. One night they'd be in this room, the next night they'd be in the next room. And it was just an awesome experience. And at some point, I think it was going across my news feed on Facebook or something, I saw something about Mixbus, and I said, "Holy cow! Look at this thing! It looks like a console. I mean, everything's built in. I think this might have been like version 2." So
Oh yeah.
I reached out to them to talk about the training program, and they supported me, and they got involved. I think that was great. They've been supporting me for years now, and I really, I think I fell into it, but once I downloaded it and started using it, there was like the light bulb goes on, and you're like, okay, this is the way to teach routing, signal flow, EQ and compression, and how to do all this while staying in the song and not getting all, too technically involved on it. Because, I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff, obviously, but
Sure.
so I break my course is broken into a few different sections. So you have to acclimate your ears. So we would listen to some music and we'd critique it. It might be a song from the 70s followed by a song from 2011 or something like that. And oh wow, listen to the difference in the drums. Listen to the vocal treatment, and we just critique that. Then I would get into the lecture, which is the sciencey stuff, and that's about an hour, maybe sometimes a couple hours, combined with tutorials where I would walk through what we covered in the lecture and go through how I do it, and I would have screen captures of me on Mixbus for that, and then the student would be cut loose to mix. I'd give them some multi-tracks, and then when they come back for the next class, we critique their mix along with these other hits, and we see how they're shaping up, how they're standing up to the big boys. And I think those critiques are very important for training. The one knob per button function of Mixbus is perfect for that. You don't have to keep opening up windows to explain something.
Right.
And I also developed the ear training kit, which is a downloadable product you can get on my website, mixingtheband.com. That it's got 2 parts. The first part is the sounds, where you watch the video and you see the EQ bands move and you hear it. You see the effects on your tracks. You see the widening. I have meters on there while things are happening. Pre-delays on reverbs, compression fast and slow, and that sort of thing. You get to hear what out of phase and mono and all that stuff sounds like. Then the rest of the ear training kit is all a couple hundred drills. And how I have it set up is you listen to some music or a snare drum or a vocal or the whole band, and then the sound changes. It changes back and it changes one more time. And you choose from multiple choice. What did you just hear? So it really gets you into critically listening to, what did I just hear? That sounded strange. All of a sudden it sounded like it was out here. What happened? Was that out of phase? Did he put a widener on there? What happened? So yeah, you learn your frequencies, you learn the sounds of compression, delay times, things like that. But that's how I got into Mixbus. That's how I tied it into the training. And now that the training is getting set up for a downloadable, more portable course, and there's less and less of the in-person stuff since COVID. It's nice to have all those tools available. You can train your ears anywhere. You can practice your mixing anywhere with Mixbus. I mean, you got a whole studio with Mixbus built into this console. So a laptop, a set of headphones, and you're mixing in the lobby. I mean, it's amazing. All of this, everything I have here, this EQ that I have here on top, it's got mid-side on it.
Yeah.
With Mixbus, you can do that. And for those who don't know how to do that with Mixbus, in your monitor section, you have a mono button. So you could connect your speakers to the monitor outs and hit the mono button and you're hearing the center. But if you then go and flip one side out of phase, let's say flip left out of phase and put it in mono, now you're listening to the sides. So you could do just about everything I have to do in Mixbus. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I see you have, I think there's a Mixbus session up on your big screen back there behind you.
Yeah, I've got a record I mixed up here just in case I had to get into something on the screen. It's hard to see. I know it's pretty far away.
It's fine. We don't have to go into all that. Well, that sounds great. I mean, I think I found Mixbus maybe version 4, something like that, maybe in like 2016. So it's been a while. And I'm the same way. It's just like once I found the console style workflow on the screen, and I was a very heavy Reaper user like way back in the day. And
it used to look like DOS to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember. I can't even fathom using Reaper today for anything. I'm just so used to Mixbus and its workflow, all the keyboard shortcuts. And I've recently came to this conclusion that if I can't do something in Mixbus, I probably shouldn't be doing it at all. You know, because it's getting me away from like what you're talking about, like the actual production elements and the arrangement of the song. It's like I don't need elastic audio to do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I don't need all the fancy. I don't need all the fancy tools that some of these other DAWs have to do that. It's just what kind of concept can you come up with about the song and just make it happen the best you can with the knowledge that you have. Does that make sense?
Well, there's a lot of good software out there.
Mm-hmm.
The Nuendo Cubase, Studio One, Pro Tools. I have a Pro Tools HDX rig that I use for tracking because it's just everywhere and all set up. My templates just travel with me. But, you know, I see people online going, well, I'm switching. Well, I'm quitting Studio One and I'm going to go to Mixbus. And my concept has always been, why? Why don't you just add Mixbus to your arsenal? I can go into Pro Tools when I need to, but if I want to mix something and I'm traveling, I have Mixbus on my laptop. I export all the files, I import them into Mixbus, and we are rocking. So I've never understood the whole quitting this and just to do this. I just have them all. And I might get a session in Studio One so I can open it up in there and then do my exports and whatever.
Sure.
But there's some good stuff out there. Don't cut yourself short. But, man, for mixing, I sometimes I get up and I just jump up and down in the room. I'm like, I just can't believe what I'm hearing coming out of this software, because I feel like I went to an expensive room and mixed it there, and it was all on my laptop with a little small set of speakers. It's just stunning what you can do with this, and it's so inexpensive.
Right. Yeah, compared to a new mic or a new distressor compressor, you know, or a new LA2A or something, it's like, shoot.
Yeah, and the compression on Mixbus is pretty good. You can go between a number of different styles with the leveler and the compressor. It's very flexible. And I've used a lot of compressors, and I have to use them all the time, especially like in a live setting where things are jumping around.
Right.
And I'm completely happy with what I'm getting out of Mixbus. And the saturation is amazing. And, you know, the fact that you can have a fader port 16 fall right in like it grew there.
Yep.
I mean, you touch something, it does what you need. You're mixing on faders. The grouping is easy. The busing is super easy and already set up. The routing is simple to understand. One thing I wanted to talk about with Mixbus that does set it a little bit above all these other programs is the polarity maximizer.
Yes, that is great.
So what I do is I'll take my drum tracks, even if I cut them in Pro Tools, and I'm going to send them to somebody who's using Pro Tools. I'll export all the drum tracks into Mixbus, and run the polarity maximizer on them to see, could I make this a little bit better, right? And I'm surprised sometimes. Maybe it'll flip the phase on the room mics and the kick drum. Maybe just
Right.
that last floor tom and the hi-hat. Maybe 6 things got changed. But you can audition which one you want to go with and listen to the sound. Usually the first or second one they come up with is really good. So if you're thinking you're getting a good drum sound and you put it in there, chances are it's going to be better. So little tools like that make Mixbus something I just have to have in my back pocket all the
Yeah,
time.
and at that point, after the phase gets flipped or the polarity gets flipped, would you then stem export those tracks, or how would you
No,
keep
no.
the polarity intact?
Well, if I'm mixing in Mixbus, I would just select what they came up with and it
Well, yeah,
changes it
sure.
on the channel strip. But if I'm
Yeah.
going to send those tracks back to Pro Tools or something, I just write down which ones got flipped. And then when I
Ah,
go into Pro Tools, which does not have polarity flip buttons on their channels for some reason, it's 2025 and you got to put a plug-in in to hit the phase flip.
yeah,
But
industry
yeah, so
standard,
I'd set it up. I would just make sure that I knew which ones it was and flip them when I got into the other software. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
it
That's
it's more
great.
like a double check.
Yeah, yeah. There's tons of great little features like that in Mixbus that most people don't even know about. Uh, but the more you learn and the more you integrate these workflows into your daily use,
Well, the
Mixbus
fact
is
that you can,
definitely
it's full of stuff. I mean,
yeah,
it looks like a console, but when you look around under the hood, you see some interesting things like you can export half a dozen different types of files all with one click.
mm-hmm.
Pro Tools is kind of a pain with that. The metering is very good. There's a bus compressor and a limiter built into the master fader. The fact that
Yeah,
it's got a monitoring section where you can put VSX or control room simulation or any kind of adjustment for your monitoring on there, but it doesn't go to the print. It's just very intuitive. Once you get used to what you're doing in there, you can move very quickly. I've had mixes up and running in an hour that I would be walking around the room going, what do I need to do to this? It just sounds great. So,
yeah. Yeah, well, let's talk about. I have a question here about your favorite gear for mixing, which I would assume Mixbus is a big part of that. But with a big console behind you, do you integrate the console at any point, maybe per a client's request or something, to maybe put the stems out across the board instead of going all in the box?
yeah, clients usually don't care what I do to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Nobody ever brings up, can you mix this on the console or something like that. My preference is to be able to see everything at once. I can scan all the EQs and see where my high end might be getting a little hot, or watch all my compression meters working together. I can see my fader levels. So I like working on a console. I like working in Mixbus with the fader port. Those to me are two very comfortable ways of working. Um, and the way I have it set up for my mix lab here is I come out of the computer and I go right through my rack gear, which I have dedicated channel strips for vocals and bass and kick and snare and all that stuff. Then
Yeah.
it hits my console. And so I can make adjustments to EQ and dynamics on the console. I've already got stuff going through my go-to units, and then they all hit my mix bus processing here, and I print it back to a track. If I'm doing mix and mix bus, all of that goes out the window. It's all in the computer, and honestly, I can't tell the difference in sound. I can do a mix and mix bus and a mix on my console with all these thousands of dollars worth of rack equipment, and the only thing I can tell the difference of is maybe my mix changes. The sound is pretty similar. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, it's the in the box stuff has gotten to the point where even the top guys are mixing on screen now, and it's there's nothing wrong with it. I just happen to have a preference. I like to move stuff and see it all at once. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, with Pro Tools, having to open your EQ plugin and then you want to see the EQ on the bass, you have to open that EQ plugin, and just having to open and close plugins all the time. You get into Mixbus and it's like you breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, I can just grab. I don't even have to open anything. You can put hundreds of plugins in here, but you
Sure.
don't have to. And So like when I'm mixing on the console, I've got my mono button, I've got my MS stuff, I've got compression, everything I can adjust in the moment. All my racks of stuff is within arm's length usually, and it's a great way to get up and go. But I am stunned by how Mixbus has pretty much taken that same approach and put it on the screen for me that I can take on my laptop. I might have a Broadway show going on at work and I have to be there for 10 hours and I'm not mixing anything. I'm just babysitting the PA. So I'll mix a record. I'm
Yeah.
sitting in the booth mixing a record with my ear on the PA and I come back. Yeah, let me listen to this. I got a little set of speakers there. And it's pretty stunning what you can do with this software. So, yeah,
That's
I'm a
awesome.
fan.
One of the features of Mixbus is called Mixer Scenes. You can see that on the bottom corner of the mixer page there. Have you
Yeah.
utilized that at all? Like
Well, I think
basically trying different mixes using and storing those different mixes as scenes and then just flipping between them.
Well, it's a lot better than doing save as and going back to another mix and having to reopen a different session and this and that. So yeah, I've made it so where I can do a couple of alternate mixes. But I think some of the beauty of those scene save buttons is that you can have sectional mixing. Like let's say you want your verses to sound one way and your choruses to sound another. You can save separate mixes on there and then you have those available to put together into your whole mix. So that's a great feature. I don't see in other software. Also up in the upper right of the screen, your mix window, there's some chiclets up there. You can have a whole bunch of those. And you can click on one to do anything you want. One can open up your preferences pane.
Right.
One can open and close your bus pane and all that, although I do see they've added those buttons on the mix window now. But yeah, so it's pretty flexible, and you can have buttons on your fader port that just do things on command as well, user identified stuff,
Yeah, that's good. Let me come through here, see some more questions. So how did mixingtheband.com come about? Like what was the nugget of or maybe the seed of that starting point in your career?
Well, mixingtheband.com is my website, and it was a little tricky to get that conceptually going because I wanted to promote myself as a drummer, but then I wanted to promote myself as an engineer, record producer, and also I have the training program. So I'm like, do I need 3 separate websites? How does this even work? And so I got someone to help me with the initial setup, and I just made it so that there's sections that you can go read about what I've done. And, if you want to order drum tracks, there's a page for that. If you want to read about and order training materials, there's pages for that. And I get into what record producers do. And, there's a button there. You can hire me to do that. And so it just became my central hub for distributing my talents, and a landing page people could go and read about what I've been up to and get into the training. So
yeah, is the training like a monthly or like a yearly subscription type thing, or how does someone sign up for a training with you?
Well, it's up until just a couple of years ago, it was all in person. I was advertising in magazines and locally and stuff, and musicians and engineers would come and pay for the course, and I would teach for 3 weeks. It'd be 8 hours a day for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So it was it's like a vocational program, and it was pretty intense. And I swear to you, these guys come out the back end mixing. They all have to turn in final mixes, and they're all something I would let the client walk out the door with. Once you train your ears, you have enough practice, mentored, and you know the nuts and bolts of the science part. It's really up to opinion at that point for whether the mix is perfect,
Yeah.
So that's how that came about. It was a little tricky, and I had to go back and forth a lot on how I was going to set that up. But nowadays, it's a WordPress website, so I can just change things. Right now, I'm adding the whole mixing workshop course as a downloadable product. So without coming to me in the studio, we have some interaction online and then homework. And you do the study and you take the quizzes and you do the ear training, and it all comes as part of the package. And I'm going to have that up and running shortly, almost all the way there on that. And the course is also going to be available on the regular vocational training sites like Teachable and stuff like that.
Okay, that's
So,
great.
yeah, I enjoy watching people get it. When they get it and they're doing mixes, it almost makes me feel like, great, I could sit here and you could do it. Take some of the load off me. But
That's right.
so yeah, I'm enjoying the whole process. I've always been into training, and I think my educational background with the university Tonmeister program gave me a real kickstart on what's important to get into, and maybe what to not really spend a lot of time on if you want to get this down and you want to have a career.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here's a question from Sensei Prod. Do you have a real day-to-day usage for the fold-back buses that are available in Mixbus?
The foldback buses, you mean the 12 mix buses?
Well, no, if you go to add a new track, bus or VCA, in that dialog box, there's a option for fold back, and it's essentially it's the way like on your console behind you of creating headphone mixes.
Oh,
A lot of people actually don't really know about those, so I'm not too surprised.
yeah, I wasn't using those at all. And the
Yeah.
thing is, the way I use Mixbus for training and for mixing is basically mixing. Another thing I use Mixbus for, surprisingly, is mastering. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
where I mixed it. If I bring these mixes into Mixbus and I put them all on stereo tracks, run them through
Yep.
the buses with the saturation, do minor EQ and dynamic and volume adjustments, I can master that record, and it comes out sounding really good there. So, yeah, that's mostly what I do with it. As far as fold back, that would be something I do during tracking, and I'm usually doing that off my console. So I haven't used the foldback buses in Mixbus. It sounds like a great implementation, though.
Yeah, it's just a different way of working. I mean, if you already have a way of creating headphone mixes, I mean, they're not really necessary, but the option is there if you want to explore. Or if anybody wants to explore that, the foldback buses in Mixbus.
Yeah, I'm going to look a little more into that. I usually need to create, when I'm tracking, at least 5 separate headphone mixes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have foldback buses for that and can do that, that might come in handy when I'm doing overdubs and I'm in the mix already in Mixbus, because then I can, with without hearing delays and stuff like that, I could send individual headphone mixes to the vocalist. Sometimes there's a group of singers that we want to add to a mix and stuff like that. So good
Yeah.
question. Yeah. Something for me
Yeah,
to
well,
look
we
a
got
little
a few
more
more
into.
minutes left here in the interview, and then we'll be done. I know you have a big session you have to go to here in a minute. So, any other last things, any other features about Mixbus that you really like and you want to tell other people about?
Well, I think I've covered most of the little things, like the MS. I think the grouping, where you just drag along the top of the tracks and you've got a group, I think that's ingenious. Having the 12 mix buses set up already for you with EQ and dynamics and saturation is brilliant. Um, I think Mixbus, the biggest part for me is being able to have everything on your console at the click of a button, have it sound amazing, and the routing is set up in a lot of cases. I mean, when I'm doing my 12 mix buses, I like to have, like, let's say drums, bass, guitar 1, guitar 2, solos, vocal 1, backup vocal, blah blah blah. But then I
Yep.
also at the end leave a couple for effects. So
Yep.
I might have individual effects sends and returns I have on the mixer, but they'll all funnel through those buses. And I think one of the more important things guys can do when they start learning how to mix is get your balances on the console side all sounding pretty good and group all those to your buses, and then you can mix on the buses. It reduces these 50 channel mixes down to 12 faders, and
Yep.
you can make minor adjustments to groups of instruments, and it comes together a lot faster. And one more one more point I want to make about guys who are struggling with things like the creeping mix, where you turn something up and now something else can't be heard, so you turn that up. And oh, that sounds good, but now I can't hear the bass, so you turn that up, and your mix just keeps creeping and creeping, and pretty soon you got to wipe all the faders and start over. One good way to get out of that hole is to use the mute button, because what I like to do is set up a drum, bass, vocal foundation for the mix on the buses and mute everything else. Now, when you start unmuting your guitars, now you can tell, oh my God, they're drowning out the whole rhythm section. Back them up, let them fit in on the sides around your foundation. Get to the vocals. You pop it on, and all of a sudden it's way on top of everything. Well, gosh, maybe I've been monitoring too loud, and I need to bring the vocal back. I'll put it on a little mono speaker, and I'll do a blend over there, get the vocal to sound awesome coming out of that little thing, pop it back on the stereo speakers, and it's right where it should be. So the mute button will get you out of the creeping mix syndrome and help you set balances. So Mixbus it just makes everything so easy for that. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of mileage out of these software consoles on the screen here.
Well, that's awesome, Sean. I really appreciate your time today, and I know all the guys who are here in the chat, and also all the people that will be watching the video afterwards, will get a lot of knowledge and little nuggets from this interview, because obviously you have tons of experience in the industry and work with live bands in the studio, and that kind of experience. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, and that's the main thing I think a lot of people, really of any walk of life, needs to learn. It's like success does not come overnight.
It's like my father used to say, another 10-year overnight success.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So if somebody wants to contact me and they have questions, I'm all about training. Mixingtheband@gmail.com is my email. Mixingtheband.com is my website. There's a contact form on there. But I would say, along the lines of what you were just talking about, don't give up. I mean, you're mixing for 3 weeks on the same song and you think it sounds like crap in your car. That doesn't mean you can't do it. That just means you've learned what not to do. So keep working. I mean, I have to update my own website. I have to have a day job to make sure I can afford to buy all this stuff when the season is happening. Sometimes the studio's empty for 3 weeks, and sometimes I don't have a minute to myself. So it's all basically go with the flow, keep improving, learn as much as you can. You can learn anything online today. You want to learn how to code websites? You can go to AI and say, hey, code me a website like this and show me why you did what you did. And you can take any course you want. I mean, Teachable, Udemy, all these places. And so there's really no excuse for not training yourself how to do things. And I really enjoy the process. I enjoy mixing. That's my comfort zone is, I might have to mix orchestras all day. When I come home and sit in front of the console and listen to a good mix, I just get off on it. I love it. So yeah, I'll help anybody. Just reach out to me.
That's awesome. Do you also have a YouTube channel, or is it just a website at this point?
My YouTube channel, I've got one for Mixing the Band, but right now there's only a couple of ear training drills up there. So I'm going to be expanding that with tips and tricks, but I also have my YouTube for my drumming. There's dozens of drumming videos up there. You can see me playing with Molly Hatchet and
great.
And Pat Travers Band in the studio, on Rockline, live in concert. I just put a bunch of stuff up there because I used to just carry a camera around and film myself. So that one's just, I think it's Sean Shannon Drums.
Okay.
It says Sean Shannon at Sean Shannon Drums. And I got Flirting with Disaster drum cam up there. And Life in London, Heat in the Street, some of my own music's up there. Yeah, I've had a good time and a lot of time to put this stuff together because I'm like 90 now. So
yeah, well, you look
the longer
great,
you live, the more you get done, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I appreciate your time, Sean, and I'll be sure to leave all links to your website and your drumming stuff on YouTube down in the description of this video. So be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell for future notifications of interviews very similar to this one. So let me know what other kind of interviews you would like me to see or like me to do, and also other Mixbus topics that we can cover in future live streams. So thanks everyone for watching. I am Nathan once again from Harrison Audio. Thank you, Sean, once again for your time, and we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. See you later.